I'd like to welcome Jim Monahan is here, so let's give him a round of applause. Mike Dietrich is also running, he's here. I would like to say this today, folks. We want to be respectful of everyone. We're going to try to maintain decorum, and we want a really good give and take here today. Everyone will, we are staying here to get all your questions answered. The way we want to do it is we're going to give out file cards and pens, and we'd ask you to write your question down. If you'd like to share your name on there. Yes, sir? We have a question already.
Yes. I don't know who you are.
I'm going to get to that in a minute. Yeah, just give me a second. I'm doing a little, in the business we call this stretching, okay? I'm stretching right now because we have a little issue here yet. Okay, so I'll give you that in 2 seconds. We're going to give you file cards today, and if you have a question, just raise your hand. We'll drop the file card by you. You write your question on there. We'll be answering every one of them. We're not running away from any questions, or we want to make sure everybody leaves here today fully informed and satisfied that you were heard. If you'd like to put your name on that card, we'd like that as well, so we can address you personally, but it's not required. So at any rate, Steve, I'm going to go forward a little bit. You're all right there?
Yeah.
Okay, good. While he's getting some things ready, I just want to set the room up, and like I said, we want to be very respectful today. We want everyone to be heard. This is a very emotional issue on both sides. Both sides are very, very much involved and engaged, and we don't want to have any feelings hurt today. We just want to hear everyone out. We want the information to get out. Our side of it is going to be the most that you'll hear, obviously, and for those of you who were here yesterday, you heard Roger's side of it. So let's be very patient with each other. Let's be kind, considerate, and let's just listen and learn. All right, so to this gentleman's question, let me start out. First of all, oh, by the way, I did forget one thing, which I think is very cool. Dave has been very kind. We have some golf carts that'll be available later. If any of you have not seen this glorious golf course, I heartily recommend that you take a ride. We have a couple of our regular golfers here that will drive you around if you're not comfortable driving a golf cart. And I would really encourage you, hopefully we'll be done before dark, and you'll be able to see the course in all of its magnificence and majesty. And it really is a special place. And I want you to see it, and if you've never been out there, you're going to be in awe. And it's a great time of year with the turning of the leaves and everything. It's just a special, special place. So I would encourage you to stay here, and as long as it's light, we're going to get you around the golf course. So let me introduce the players here today. So who am I? My name is Bob Marino. I live on Indian Drive. I happen to live on the 5th hole, so I have a real stake in this thing. I recently retired after 50 years in the food service distribution industry. I held several senior management positions in a Fortune 500 company, including CEO, COO, and Vice President of Sales and Marketing. My last 7 years, I was deployed as what's called a Field Effectiveness Captain. That's the greatest job you ever want in your life. There's no responsibility, no numbers to make. All I did was fly around the country and teach presidents and vice presidents how to do their jobs, how to be better facilitators and managers. So what a cool job that was. All right. Outside of work, I've served on several nonprofit boards. I spent 10 years with the Arts Council of Rockland. I was board president and treasurer. I'm currently a member of the executive board and serve as a finance officer for Leo Latter's Post 130 American Legion. I'm also a member of Stony Point Sons of the American Revolution, and no, it wasn't my Italian side. It was my mom's side of the family, thank you. And I was recently appointed the incoming treasurer there. A little stint as a Boy Scout leader, did a couple years as a Little League coach. So I've been around and doing a few good things for the community. I have a strong passion for this golf course and a unique relationship with Patriot Hills. As I said already, I live along the 5th hole, and when I bought that property, I was promised parkland and open space in perpetuity. It's one of the reasons I bought my property. So I'm very concerned with what might happen there. I was a member of the original land use committees that sat around, and we decided there were 5 committees. recreation, senior, business, I forget all the names of them, but we were the recreation committee, and we were the folks that came up with the idea for the golf course. And we sold it to the town hall at that time. And it was a great idea because we had open space. We knew that once it was, sir, we're not going to take questions right now, please. Pardon me? We're going to get to everything. Just give me a few minutes.
And leave, shut up.
You heard it all yesterday from the other side.
Please finish, sir. Continue.
I just said we're going to be kind, considerate, and patient, okay? Let's try it. All right? Yes.
I think it's important to find out who these people are.
Okay, but not the whole history.
Then we understand what they're talking about.
All right, continue, sir.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. So back then, that committee determined that we should have this open space and recreation for the town. One of the things that a town should be doing is providing for recreation. They don't always have to make money on recreation. It's a service that a town provides. We have Lowland Park, we have the pool, we have the Little League fields. How much money are we making from those operations? Probably zero, folks. This one, you're making money. So that's one of the primary reasons that once this thing was paid off, we knew that this would become like a rateable for the town. And I can tell you that we had a vision back then, and this is the most frustrating part for me, was that the vision was that this would be a full-service complex so that everyone in the town could come here for some recreational use. Horseback riding, tennis courts, swimming pool, bocce ball courts, you name it, walking trails, hiking trails. Everything was proposed to be in phase 1, 2, 3. These were things that we were supposed to get to at some point. And my frustration over the last 20 years is this has never happened. And it can still happen. It's something that we can still do if we all decide to pull together and get it done. This is not insurmountable here. It just takes vision, it takes some ingenuity, it takes some willingness to roll up your sleeves and get the job done. It can be done. All right, so let me continue with the panel in case anybody wants to know who's up here. On this, my far right is Dario Mazurik. He's been a resident for Stony Point for 31 years and is a member of the Players Club here. He used to be a 9 handicap. He's more like a 12 now. He says 11, but he's getting a little older and a little long in the tooth. Professionally, he's a vice president at NTT Data, a technology services firm, as a full-time role. But most importantly for today's reason, he's here to answer questions around the golf course and its condition and the play, but he's also the chairman of the board of Camp Venture, soon to be named Venture Together. And Camp Venture is the largest neighbor of this property and in question having both a camp, day programs, and an equestrian center adjacent to the golf course. So that is his purpose for here today, and you can have some questions ready around that as well. Next up is Walter Cintron, next to Dario. He's been a resident of Stony Point Tompkins Cove for 44 years. He and his wife raised their 2 daughters in Stony Point, and they attended all of our local schools. Walt is also retired from the electric utility industry with a background in power systems, engineering, and a specialty in compliance enforcement. He's currently an adjunct instructor for Bismarck State College. Stony Point Little League benefited greatly by Walt's membership on their board of directors and years as a coach. Next to Walt is Joyce Julian. Joyce has been living in Stony Point for 43 years. For 34 years, she touched the hearts and minds of numerous young students as a teacher in the North Rockland School District. She is currently the treasurer of Stony Point United. And finally, Greg Julian. Greg has a PhD in political science from Temple University. He has been a professor at Pace University for over 25 years. Greg served on our North Rockland School District's Board of Ed from 1980 to 1986. He was president for 3 of those years. Some of his considerable accomplishments throughout his tenure on the board include obtaining an $18 million bond, the construction of Willow Grove School, and laying the foundation for building Fieldstone School. He is co-founder and the first president of People to People. Finally, Greg has been active in many environmental initiatives associated with the Hudson River as well as Clearwater Board of Directors and a consultant to the United Nations Commission on Sustainable Development. So that's our panel. We'll have a guest speaker as well in the audience. We have a couple people that you can hear from later. So that's your question, sir. Okay, so I already laid out how we're going to go forward. Again, we're going to ask you to fill out the file cards. There'll be presentations, and then at the end of the presentation, if you would stay on that topic with your questions, we'll answer them, and then before we move to the next presentation. Any thoughts, questions on that, the format? Everybody okay with that? Okay, great. So I would like to call on Joyce Julian. She's going to, someone asked, who are we? And who is the organization that's trying to run this today? And it is Stony Point United. I will preface her remarks. I don't want to take the steam away from her, but I will tell you that we are not affiliated with any political party or person. We are a very diverse group of people. We have all ages. We have all ideologies. And I'll come right out and say it. I'm a registered Republican. I voted for Mr. Monahan every time I had a chance to do it. I am breaking ranks with him on this one, folks. I am not for the sale. And you're going to hear later why I feel that way. But so that's my side of the story. Joyce, are you ready?
Question?
Yeah.
Yes. As you all know, I'm a political candidate and my opponent is here. What I would suggest on some issues, since I'm the person that got us the permissive referendum, I would request that on some issues I be allowed to address and that anybody who's on the opposition can also
Well,
have the
this
same
is,
amount of time.
Mike, in all due respect, this is not a political meeting. We're trying to get some information out to the folks here that came yesterday, and obviously they're very interested they came today. So we want to keep it on track. I will say this, ladies and gentlemen, if you're interested in talking to the candidates after this meeting, please feel free to go up and address whatever you might want to know from them. All right, I'm sorry, Mike, but we have to keep it on track, okay? We only have a couple hours. Joyce?
Just checking, is the mic, can you hear me? Is the mic on?
The mic should be
louder. A little closer.
Okay. I'm going to use my teacher's voice and hope that you can hear me. It's not on. Okay. Can you hear me in the back?
Yes.
All right. I'm here to share with you who Stony Point United is. We are your neighbors, men, women, old, young, Republicans, Democrats, independents, golfers, and those who think golf is a good walk round. So I'm going to give you a little history on Stony Point United, but I want you to remember that it was the residents of Stony Point who voted initially to build this golf course. And we have paid for the golf course over the years, and at this point, we have pretty much paid for all of it. So we own it. Let's keep that in mind. Okay, history of Stony Point United. In September of 2018, the Stony Point Town Board signed a memorandum of understanding for the sum of $10,000 per month, granting the exclusive rights to the LLC headed by Roger Marr to explore developing the site. That would have been $250,000 in revenues right now. But the politicians and Raj decided not to collect the money. This after the supervisor said the town was being paid the retainer to stop the sale to anyone else. In February of 2020, the Stony Point Town Board signed a contract with Roger Marr's LLC to sell the 266 golf course, the clubhouse, plus the catering facilities for $3 million. To add injury to insult, the town is giving the developer an additional 26-acre site known as Letchworth Village for just $1, whole site, $1. The town and Raj also agreed to rip down the row building for a $3 million promissory note to replace the community center being demolished. The plans or the location of the community center remains unknown, and it's only a promissory note. In May of 2020 through August in March of 2020, the Stony Point Town Board refused to put the sale of the property and the golf course on the ballot for a referendum so that the townspeople could vote. Dozens of people bravely collected 543 signatures during the COVID pandemic to give us the right to vote. In May 2020 through August 2020, our petitions were challenged on a technicality by a couple from Stony Point. However, they were represented by Roger Marr's law firm based in Garden City, Long Island, and also a lawyer hired by the town of Stony Point itself. We lost that skirmish. In November 2020, over 50 people passed a second petition, again during COVID, asking for the right to vote on the sale of our land. At that time, we collected 525 signatures, and again, we were opposed by Roger's law firm and the town board. In November 2020 through May 2021, Michael Dieterich, a Stony Point lawyer, volunteered to work pro bono, that means free, to represent Stony Point United to defend our constitutional rights to vote in a referendum. In May of 2021, the court ruled that our petitions were valid and we, the people, had the right to vote on this referendum. Stony Point is, at that point, had to register with the New York Board of Elections as a ballot initiative committee. And we had to choose a side, and that side is opposed to the sale of our property, and that's what you can vote on in the referendum. So we are asking that you vote to stop the sale of this land. And I just want to end by saying, without Stony Point United, whether you are for or against the sale of this property, you would not have had the right to vote. Thank you.
I would now ask Greg, Julian, to give us an idea of the goals and the objectives of Stony Point United.
I'm a professor and I promise not to lecture you. This is really pretty short and sweet. We did not intend in our lives to start Stony Point United. We had to register a name for this referendum. What we did is continue the dialogue that started 20 years ago to determine how we're going to preserve this land, and here we are today trying to convince you that the facts as you know them, as we are presenting them, are researched. You can have opinions, but facts are facts, and we need to clear that up. And that's really the purpose of us here being, that's why we're here today. We're not in conflict with each other. We had to take two sides. I don't want this to be conflicting, because what we're trying to do is give you information so you can choose the best choice that you think that you should be making. Joyce and Bob both said, this is not a political effort. Yes, I have a political affiliation, and I had a struggle not to have that be part of Stony Point United. It was really difficult. I think we've accomplished it, and I hope we had. This meeting should have preceded, and meetings like this should have preceded any signing of the contract. We needed to know what was in that contract, and despite our incredible efforts, we still do not know what's in this contract. This contract is so fluid. Like Mercury, it changed 2 times yesterday. 3 more things were added to the contract. How do we vote and let this contract be signed, give the authority for the supervisor to sign this contract, when we don't even have a contract to look at and to see? The due diligence that we needed to have, the information was never, ever given. The fact that we were supposed to have $10,000 per month. We questioned budget hearings over and over. It was said in newspaper and magazines that we were getting it. We didn't get it. And I think that's abysmal. And you have to judge the person who is wanting to develop this by his actions that he's already done, which is not to make pay what he was committed to and signed an agreement to give us. Well, he had exclusive rights. When people heard that you could buy 26 acres for $1, you know, people began to be interested. The talk of these buildings being in incredibly difficult, dilapidated states, I just want to remind you that 6 of the 10 buildings are in use today. And I need to also emphasize that we've, over the 20 years, have elected Democrats and conservatives who have failed miserably. Both parties have failed to maintain these buildings, which was their duty and obligation to do so. So just because you get a lack of vigilance on maintaining these buildings, don't lose faith that we can't do this. When we had asbestos in the administration building on Main Street, we encapsulated it. It is not as critical a reason to reject this as people are saying. Yes, there are problems with these buildings, but you know, I want you maybe at the end of this, go straight instead of turning a left and right, go about 600 yards and look at Fieldstone School. After we got Willow Grove constructed, we started the process of bringing Thomas Building Company into this area and having them look at these buildings. And Fieldstone Building used 3 of the buildings like this, dealt with the asbestos, dealt with the lead, and typically, because Stony Point in North Rockland is a great school district, that became an award-winning design throughout the entire United States. So don't tell me it can't be done. It can be done if we have the will. It can be done if we have the imagination. And damn it, we should be doing it here.
Thank you, Greg. I would also remind you, look at the room you're in. This was also remediated at one time or another. And it was done so nicely, I had my daughter's wedding here, and it was spectacular. It really was. Are we ready, Steve? So we're going to, I know some of you in the back may have a tough time seeing some of these slides, but we're going to try and go through a couple things here just to help you to understand where we're coming from. So I want to float a question out there to all of you, and to me, this really says it all. If you were in the 29th year of a 30-year mortgage on your $500,000 home, would you be selling it for $50,000?
No.
Anybody want to raise their hand? Because I'll buy all you got. I'll take every one of them right now. Anybody wants to sell their house for 10 cents on the dollar? And folks, that's what we're doing. I'm sorry. Here's the situation. We've paid out about $25 million. And the fact of the matter is, when this deal is done, if it goes forward the way it is, we're going to get less than $2 million out of it. Not even 10%. And here's the math. I don't know if you can see it up there. We're going to get $3 million from the sale in cash. And that's already been well documented and publicized. We owe a remaining bond payment of about $1.2 million. It's not in one payment. It's stretched out over a couple of years. Next year, it's only about $660,000, something like that. And then it goes down considerably every year after that. So based on the $1.2 million, the actual net income to the town is going to be $1.8 million. That's what we're going to see. And trust me, that's not going to lower your taxes, folks. That's not going to contribute to anything that we can do in the town, much at all. It sounds like a lot of money. It's a lot of money to individuals, but to a town our size, it's not a lot. All right. Now, there is a discussion around that it's 6.4 and there's an additional 3 million out there. Let's talk about that for a second. That 3 million is just a performance bond. And the performance bond is a promise by Mr. Amar to build, I think it's a 7,500 square foot building. That's going to be our multi-purpose center. Could be our court, our senior center, and everything else. But it's not a cash payment to the town. It's basically all it is a promise to build. It gives us some ability to litigate it later if it doesn't happen. And yeah, we probably will get a nice building out of it. But you know what? We got some nice buildings working. The court is beautiful. This building's beautiful. There's some very good spots that we have that we don't have to build if we don't really need to. So it's kind of a non-issue as far as I'm concerned. And it could also cost them less than $3 million. We've done some studies on square foot and what each square foot should cost, and we really come up with more like 2.6 versus 3. But that's just cutting corners, whatever. So at any rate, what we'd like to do is just say, stop stretching the truth, because the fact of the matter is, this course will be profitable in 1 year. We haven't been able to pay off the bond. It is costly. The bond has been, there's no question, that was costly to us, but it's not something we went into with our eyes closed. When we voted for this 15, 20 years ago, we knew this was a long-term fix, a long-term opportunity that we put out there. So, but guys and gals, we're there. We're done. This thing is virtually done. There are operating cash flows that are positive and have been positive from day one. Dave Fusco has done a marvelous job here at the course. He's a very good operator. He knows what he's doing. Right now we have an amazing superintendent in Evan. This guy came over from Sleepy Hollow, and what he's done to the course and the conditions out there is nothing short of a miracle. And the course operating cash flows were positive from 2015 to 2020, totaled $1.6 million in net positive cash flow. That's an average profit of $273,000 a year that we bring in over and above what it costs us to pay the staff, put gasoline into the mowers, buy toilet paper for the latrine out there, you name it, whatever those costs were. We make $273,000 more over the last 5-6 years. I want to remind you, the last 2 years was COVID, and what else happened 2 years ago? Incredible caterers left, and they were generating in rental income $150,000 to $200,000, which would have been improving this picture as well. So think about that. And there's some options, we're going to talk about the future and some things that we can do down the road. But there's so much that we could do if we marketed this place and we really got behind it and we really did what we had to do here. So the bottom line is Patriot Hills will be profitable after 2022's payment of a little over $600,000. So why are we selling it? Why are we selling it? And you're going to hear later that there's abatements and all kinds of things where the taxes are going to be not paid fully until 2053. And next year, or 2 years rather, we can start making close to $300,000. And if we open the caterer back up, who knows what it could be. And I have some ideas on what we can do about the caterer too, and make even more money. That was my business. I was in food service. I know where we're missing the boat there. And I would recommend we have a task force. If this vote goes down, we had a task force to buy this place and put it up. I'm recommending we put a task force together of concerned citizens that have some business acumen and have some expertise, and let's do it right. I have a lot of respect for it. Thank you. You're right. It should have been done 20 years ago. But I have a lot of respect for Mr.
Who started this?
Pardon me?
Who started this?
What do you mean, who started
Why
it?
was this, why did we get here?
Well, the town decided it would be...
Who authorized the sale?
Oh, who authorized the sale? I mean, maybe we can find that out later. I don't know that. I'm reacting to the sale. I don't know. I don't know where it started.
Authorized it?
Huh?
Our officials?
Yes, they did.
I'm assuming, yeah.
Town board.
They should resign.
Well, I don't want to get into that right now. I just want to handle November 2nd, folks.
This is turning people
Okay.
against people.
But, I mean, the fact of the matter is, there's so much more we could do with this property and make money and really have something genuine for the whole town to enjoy here. I still have that wish and that vision of this being a complete complex for kids, for seniors, for everybody that can come here and have recreation. And I want to say this, I have the utmost respect for Mr. Amar. Listen, he is so successful. He's very bright. His business acumen is beyond compare, okay? But you know what? He puts his pants on one leg at a time, folks. If he can fix these buildings, we can fix these buildings. It's just a matter of wanting to do it, have the energy to do it, and have the desire to make this work for all of us.
Where are you getting the funds from?
Well, we start making money next year. We have some surplus in you're gonna hear some surplus in the account. You'll hear about it later. And please don't yell out. We'd appreciate that, okay?
Yeah,
Huh?
everyone's yelling out.
I'm just saying no one should yell out, okay? Okay? So at any rate, we're profitable next year. We're already making $273,000 on the average, without a lot of marketing, without the caterer. There's a lot of things that can be done to make even more money. So, Your Honor, the people rest their case. Honestly, we shouldn't have to say any more than that, but we got more, so don't go away.
On that 7,500 square foot building, is there gonna be a rent on that, or is he just getting it?
Well, I think we have the answer to that down the road. I don't want to put you off, but we're going to get into all of these answers. What I'd like to go back to, first of all, we're going to show you a quick video that I think is going to be very informative. And while we're showing you the video, I'd appreciate it if you ask for those file cards. We'll come around. If you have questions like that one, please write it on the file cards, and we'll come around. We'll pick them up as soon as you're ready. In the meantime, you can watch this video. Thank you.
We've got a beautiful top 16 course that's healthy by every measure. But if you listen to the developer, you'd think the course was falling apart at the seams. The town and the developer have been repeating the same talking points over and over for the last 3 years. And for many people, they've become fact. So let's look at some of their claims. The developer claims that the golf course hasn't been maintained in many years because the town has no money. This is completely false. The town has a healthy surplus of $5 million, and each year they budget more than $500,000 for maintenance. Another claim, the course needs $8 million in improvements. Now this is real spin. He's not saving us $8 million. This is the developer's wish list for his gold-plated, high-end private club members, not the needs of our small town public course. Our view, which we put into a plan called Stony Point Rising, is that our $25 million investment is about to pay off with the last major bond payment in the new town budget. Despite all the spin and false claims, Patriot Hills is healthy and can be a dynamic engine of economic growth for Stony Point. After all, tell me, what other venue in our town attracts tens of thousands of visitors every year? How crazy to sell it off for pennies on the dollar. So we believe that Patriot Hills needs to be operated and maintained more efficiently and effectively. It isn't that the course doesn't make money. It makes money. It averages almost $2 million a year. And this year, it will probably surpass $2.1 million. The problem is how we spend the money. One option is to cut costs, is to utilize a golf management company to operate and maintain the course. Doing so would save hundreds of thousands of dollars and generate $300,000 to $500,000 of revenue per year for Stony Pointers. Just think, we could generate $4 million in revenue before the developer paid a penny in taxes. And this is what other towns and other golf courses have done. Broadacres in Orangetown, Blue Hill in Pearl River, and Spook Rock in Ramapo have all turned to a golf management company to cut their costs, save hundreds of thousands of dollars, and operate their courses profitably. Another option is to hire a golf management consultant to provide assistance in looking for places to cut costs and increase revenue. One of the key components of the success of Patriot Hills is to reopen the Patriot Grill and Catering Hall. The developer claims he's saving us $5 million in repairs and improvements. But that's more than what it cost to construct the entire building originally. Do you see a pattern here? Wild and inflated claims that are simply a wish list for his high-end private club members. He's not saving us millions. Reopening the Patriot Grill and Catering Hall will generate an additional $150,000 to $200,000 in revenue for Stony Point. Finally, our view is that Patriot Hills should be rezoned from 5-acre housing to recreational to give the golf course an extra layer of protection. The bottom line is the golf course is healthy and can be a huge financial asset for our town. So let's stop and let the panel make a few comments. We've got a beautiful.
Okay, thank you, Steve. What I'd like to do now, unless someone from the panel had anything to add to that? No?
Yeah.
Do you want to say something? This is Dario, Missouri.
I don't want to get into the weeds with regard to the financial analysis. That's not really what I want to say. But when you go through and look at the financials, we really haven't had a conversation around what I would consider an accurate cash flow analysis. You've heard some scenarios today or some factoids about that. My concern is that should have been communicated in the past prior to this ultimately coming to a proposition. Because the reality of it is, the metaphor of the $500,000 house soon to be paid off really kind of strikes home with me, and I think many of you as residents. So the reality of it is, what do we do with the ongoing cash flow that's positive? How do we lower expense? We've shown some options associated with that. And to what extent are we going to use our other general fund dollars for what? The $5 million surplus, I know it's important to Jim and the town board with regard to bond rating and so forth, but there's really never been a cogent discussion around how you actually will use the existing funds we have in the general fund, plus the additive monies for adding a new catering hall and the caterer, and really doing a true, what I would consider to be a true cash flow analysis to look at it so that the residents of Stony Point could look at, say, over a 5 or 10 year term, really understand what the overall outcome could be. And that way, then you could look at your options and say, okay, I can afford this, but I can't afford that. I'll move this in, or I'll add this particular amenity, but it'll be a cogent discussion based on facts and not just simply some vision statements. Clearly, Raja, who I know, and I've done business with Raja as chairman of the board at Venture, where he offered to buy my building on the South Campus. He lost that bid. I sold it to St. Thomas Aquinas College, and he is an astute businessman, no question about it. But Raja has truly a high-end vision, and I don't fault him for that at all. But I think as residents and as taxpayers, you need to know what the true cash flow analysis is so that you can decide, do I spend this money into the golf course? Do I add a caterer business back in? Do I open this back up? And do I make other amenities to the golf course, as well as that vision of a recreational spend for the residents, as contrasted with Roger's vision. So I think you have to look at it in that context. And my main argument here is you don't know the numbers, and that's troubling to me. The only other point I'll make, and we can get into the weeds a little bit later, is that we do not have a definitive agreement of which to vote. Yesterday, as Jim well knows, and I see Jim in the back room, yesterday's meeting, which I attended, there were at least 3, if not 4, verbal changes to what Raja said he would do based on input yesterday. We can get into those later if you want, but it's indicative of the fluidity of what this agreement is. It's really just more of a memorandum of understanding or a draft agreement. It is not a definitive agreement. I think one of the attorneys in the room yesterday made that point with respect to many provisions, warranties, remedies, etc. So my concern is not only the money, but the fact that we don't have a definitive agreement, of which I know the details on. We can get into it later, but those 2 points I wanted to make. Back to you. And I'll be more than happy to talk later about my concerns being the largest neighbor in the property, given all my interests, which I will also be happy to share.
Thank you, Dario. Thank you, Dario. And I think I want to echo what he said. If we vote for this on November 2nd, it's final. It's the finality of it. We don't have options after that. Everything we're discussing and will discuss today goes away. All of that control, all of that opportunity that we're talking about will become moot at that point. So it's very important to get the i's dotted and the t's crossed, as we used to say. All right, I do have some questions. I'm going to try and get through most of them. Some of them I'm going to delay because I know we're going to cover this later, and we may answer those questions for you. So just to keep it moving, okay? So the first one I have here is, was the sale of the land put out on bid? Somebody want to handle that one?
We've been put out to bid. There's something in government that there's something called an RFP. An RFP is a request for proposals. That's how government seeks bids and goes out. We've been told, oh, we get people knocking at our door. Toll Brothers came here. Great Wolf came here. Passing by in the Palisades, let's see what we can do. We only had one real attempt in 2011. We got a grant, Bob Sherwood and Luann Konopko, a Democrat and Republican, went out and got a grant to try to really see and get the ball rolling again. We hired a consulting firm. The consulting firm gave very thoughtful analysis. They thought we should build a community center here. They said we have to take these lots and divide them up. You'll be encouraged people to buy only a bit of it. I've yet to see a RFP done in a proper governmental way. Here's our land, we want you to bid on it. That hasn't happened. And until that happens, we don't know what the value of it is. There might be, the county just allocated a huge amount of their resources for bringing people in to the film industry. Rockland County has become a mecca of filming. Look at these big buildings. They did the Silver Kelp factory in Long Island City. Why? Because they were huge and they needed huge buildings to put up sets. We haven't even begun to tap the potential of this place. We need not to vote for this contract on November 2nd.
It's interesting. I play golf here with a fellow quite often, and he's a very successful commercial realtor. And when he read the contract, the first thing he did was he called me. He said, if I knew that's the way they were willing to write the contract, I would have dropped $10, $12 million on you immediately. And he has the money, trust me. So there's problems with the contract, there's no question about it, even though, especially since it's not even finished yet. This is one I never even thought of. I don't know who wrote it, but it said, if sale is approved, will a proposed tax structure set a precedent for future projects in town? I don't know if we have a person on the panel could address that, but that's a great question.
Can we save it?
We could save that. Maybe, we have Dave Evangelista in the audience, I believe, right? Dave, you're here somewhere? Okay, do you want to answer that for us, Dave? We have Dave Evangelista, is a very good accountant here. You want to handle that or no? Oh, I'm sorry. I don't know. Where is he? Oh, he's over there. Everyone there? See, I don't know everybody here. I'm sorry. I commuted to New Jersey. I don't know anybody in the room.
So based on what the idea, hi, I'm David Evangelista. Some people don't know.
There you are.
I've been here a while. So I don't know the exact answer. My best guess would be no, because the IDA was here, the chairman of the executive director of IDA was here yesterday, and said that this would be the first project they would do in Stony Point. So that would lead me to believe there are no, now there were probably some pilots, I know of some pilots on the way, the school district and a couple other things with the utility plans had some, but of a commercial entity of this type of structure that would go through IDA for tax incentives, they claim this is the first project of this type.
Okay, so it's not something we should...
Well, will this set a precedent? IDA doesn't have to follow precedent. They
Okay.
follow the structure.
All right, so we're not really concerned about that one then.
Bob, Dave is correct.
What's that?
Dave is correct.
Oh, thank you, Jim. Okay. I don't know if we got this number. We knew about it yesterday. On average, how much does it cost to keep the property per resident? I don't know who wrote this. Are we talking about, I mean, right now, we just told you the property's profitable on positive cash flows. There is some accounting information there that we'll get into later that the town does to I know I was responsible for budgets and P&Ls for my companies over the many years, and we had something called EBITDA, and it's called earnings before interest, taxes, depreciation, and amortization. And what we would do, I lived and died by EBITDA. I had to hit that number, and as long as I hit that number, I kept my job. And then the accountants and all the lawyers in our company would go to work on what was left in profit, and they try to hide it in depreciation, amortization, taxes, interest, whatever we could do to hide it. We've done that here, folks. We've got a big depreciation number on this building and the golf course. Probably too big, to be honest with you, from my experience. And somebody will handle that a little bit later. So don't be, you know, they're telling us that this place is going to lose money for the next 10 years. It makes money after we sort it out and we don't do the accounting that's being done on it. All right.
Let me try and answer that question.
Go ahead,
if I
Walt.
understand it, because I've done some.
This is about $120 a resident based on 15,000 residents and a true expense budget of $1.8 million without the debt service and depreciation. So
And that's probably correct. It's approximately. I figured out it was about $134 per family.
No, I just did it on my phone.
Okay, so.
We're not that far off.
We're good with that.
Did you have something, Walt, or you were going to do that? Oh, okay, thank you. Next one, if the property sells after Raj builds and improves, do we now have to pay rent on the building we bought? What's the building we bought? I'm not sure.
Oh, the 7,500.
Oh, the new building. Oh, does anybody know the answer to that?
No, we own it. It's being built on the parcel. It's carved out and staying with the town.
Okay, so that's a non-issue, good. All right, we finally got a non-issue. Can you use town taxes to build on private property?
Hold on one second.
Yep.
David's asking for clarification.
7,500 square foot RCC building is being built on the piece that the town is carved out and keeping, correct?
The senior center.
The 7,500 square foot building.
Yeah, that is correct. That building is gonna be placed before the Little League fields. That land there, it's actually, if you look on a contract, it has the lot number where that building will be built. And the question earlier, somebody asked, that will go to the town, no charge, that'll be to the town. And that's part of the requirement with New York State, we put that for the parkland alienation. So that has been approved by the state, so yes,
Okay.
that
Good.
building goes to the town.
The next one is, can you use town taxes to build on private property? I don't know, does that apply here? I don't know. No, really, I don't think we have that issue. I mean, once he owns it, it's his property, he's not gonna use our tax money, I don't believe. This one, I don't know if we know the definitive answer, but we're gonna put it out there because I think it's a great question. Why did Incredible Caterers leave? The only thing I know, and I'll put it out there because I've been around, one thing I forgot to mention earlier is I also work at the golf course. I'm a starter and a ranger. In my retirement years, this was my goal. Believe it, I had very small goals, to be working at a golf course. It's just that I love this place so much, and I'm so passionate about it. I just love being around the golfers. I love seeing new golfers come here, and their eyes light up. I get to them around the 9th, 10th hole if I'm rangering, or when they come back and I'm at the starters area, and I say, "How do you like it?" You know, and to a person, they are blown away at the layout, the conditions, how well it's maintained, and just the challenge of this course. It's a beautiful course. I'm going to make a personal comment. I know people are getting tired of hearing it, but a friend of mine here in this room went to Pebble Beach this year. I'm going to tell you something. When I came home, I was sitting on the 3rd tee, and I'm looking out over that green, that fairway and green, and it's one of the best top 20 holes in New York State. And I'm sitting there going, you know what? If those Little League fields were the Atlantic Ocean, this would be Pebble Beach of the East. It was so beautiful. It really was.
Bob,
Yeah.
Anita has something to say on the
Okay.
incredible content.
Oh, you know it? Okay, good.
I am part of Stony Point United, and doing our research for over 3 years, there were lots of conversations. I personally contacted people from Incredible Caterers, and I was told by Incredible Caterers that their contract was not renewed.
Yeah, Jim, do you want to clear that up?
Sure. They came, before Raj was buying the property, They called me, they asked to meet with me and the finance director, that sat right here. And what they told us is, and I thought they had 20 years ago, they gave some sweetheart deal, and they said, we're not going to renew the contract. I was a little taken back. One of the things in their contract, they were required to maintain the heat, the air conditioning, the grill room, which they never, first 20 years was in great shape. It's like your home, needs to be redone. It's all not working properly. They Band-Aided it. When it came to them putting in money, they said,
Okay.
we're not going to renew the contract. They also
So there was a
said-
lot of work that needed to be done, they were unwilling to do it. Okay,
Correct, they were willing to.
all right.
No. But again, my conversation conflicts that. And the conversation was that the town of Stony Point did not renew their contract. It was not up to Incredible Caterers. I'm telling you a conversation that I had with representatives from Incredible Caterers.
Well, I don't want to get hung up on Incredible, and I'll tell you why. I have a view of what we should do, and my view is Incredible Caterers was paying us anywhere from $150,000 to $200,000 a year in rent. It never, as far as I know, was ever audited. We kind of relied on their honesty, which is a big mistake, but we did, and I have this view of it. My deal as a marketing VP and everything else, I used to deal with a lot of high-end golf courses and a lot of top flight restaurants and caterers. And I would like to see, rather than put another caterer in here, I would like to hire a professional food and beverage manager or director, just like we have a golf director. Let that person run it. If they were giving us $200,000 a year as a little 5% or whatever it was for what they were earning, just think what we could keep every year in-house for our own pockets if we had our own operation here. So that's one of the options I would like to see.
Let's go to Walter's chart on the
You
finances.
want to hold off these for now? All right.
Well, we keep on getting more questions.
Okay, we'll do some more later.
This is the only one, just one chart, that's all.
One pumpkin's down.
All right, that slide looks a little large, but anyway, in any
So
case,
we can read it.
this particular slide shows the cash flows from the operating activities. These figures are taken from the town of Stony Point financial statements, okay? So basically, these are for the last 3 years, 2018 and 19 and 20. And you can see that the cash flows have been going up over the last 3 years from 160,000 in 2018 to 177,000 in 2019. And in 2020, it was $232,000. So the and the cash flows is indicative of the health of the golf course itself. So think of it that way, okay? That's the way you can interpret the cash flow definition. So you can see from a business perspective, it is producing revenue to the town.
Walter,
So you wanted to just
where did you
mention
get that fact? You just making this up?
No, I've got that from the financial statements that are on, that the
Audited financial
audited
statement?
financial statements from the town of Stony Point.
Thank you.
Now, in the prior years, if I graphed every year since 2013, you're also going to see that the cash flows have been positive. None of them have been negative, and they've been in hundreds of thousands of dollars in the positive.
From a financial perspective, and I'm not a CPA, I do have a master's degree in finance, but the cash flow was looking forward now is really all that's really, quite frankly, relevant. So as you look at now making a decision on the financials, you look at, again, the cash flow, and you look really ultimately at the net present value. Now, we haven't done that. At least I haven't seen any, calculations that show what the net present value will be over a period of 5 years or beyond, which would totally incorporate not only the money coming in from the golf course, but what you would think would be possible through an option for a caterer, which would be additional revenue. less the expenses associated with management company, so your expenses are reduced, which again improves your net cash. And then, to be fair, you look at the bond that has to be paid off, and you do that analysis over a period of time, and it tells you whether or not it's a positive decision or not. All indications suggest this is a positive decision. So it's a positive asset, making money, and the trends are still going in the right direction. My only concern is that I haven't seen that analysis as presented as I would typically do in a business environment, making a decision about, whether or not to buy something or to sell it, et cetera, et cetera. So I just make that additional point, not to dismiss the fact that, you look into the past, because on a decision-making basis, you look forward and you do the analysis. So that would be my comment.
Okay, go to video. All right, we have another short video, Steve.
Phase 2 of Stony Point Rising focuses on Letchworth Village. The town and developer like to lump it in with the golf course, but they're two distinct entities and are zoned differently. So let's take a look at this video.
We're hearing a lot of static from the town board these days about the buildings at Letchworth Village. They say the buildings are decrepit, that they have no value and they should be torn down. Well, let's cut through the static and get to the facts. 6 out of 10 of these so-called decrepit buildings are currently in use. There's Kirkbride Hall in the Row Building, a gathering place for young and old and the site of countless community meetings. The Patriot Hills Restaurant Catering Hall and the Cornell Cooperative Extension. And even the town court is here. Now, if all of these buildings are as decrepit as the town board claims, then why are they filled with people every day? Why haven't they been condemned? The fact is, there's nothing wrong with these buildings that some maintenance and repair couldn't fix, and the town has the money to do it. Because here's another fact. By deferring maintenance on these buildings, the town has amassed a $5 million surplus. So why not do what other river towns have done and use that $5 million to repurpose our older buildings? Why should towns like Cold Spring and Beacon get all the tourists and new businesses when we have Patriot Hills, one of the top 16 golf courses in New York State? We have the Hudson River, the Stony Point battlefield. We're the gateway to Bear Mountain and Harriman State Park, and we have Letchworth Village. Maybe the only thing we're missing is a little imagination. So the next time you start hearing static from our local politicians about Letchworth Village, just remember the facts. Let's not sell off our assets and our future.
So in addition to the spin that the buildings are decrepit and falling down, the developer has been making another false claim. He's going to save us $800,000 over 5 years on maintenance for the Letchworth buildings. This is a whopper. First, he leaves out that we'll continue paying maintenance for Kirkbride Hall. He omits the cost of maintaining the row building until the new one is built, and he has 7 years to do that. He also omits the maintenance costs we'll be paying on the new replacement row building. And then there's the town court. Conveniently left out of his savings claim is the cost of building, buying, or leasing a new town court. If the town court stays on the property for the first 2 years, we'll continue to pay maintenance. If we stay beyond 2 years, we pay the developer $9,000 a month. That's $108,000 per year. I can't imagine how he gets to claim he's saving us money, but that seems to be the pattern. Fuzzy math, misleading statements, and outright falsehoods. Part of our plan for revitalizing Letchworth Village comes from the Miller-Turner Consulting Study in 2014. It recommends, and it recommended that we subdivided the property so that each building would be on its own lot. This would give us many more options for developing the property. So the plan to subdivide each building onto its own lot allows us to sell buildings, one building or two buildings, rather than having to sell the entire property. Some businessman would not want to deal with all 24 acres and all the 10 buildings, but he would take on an individual building. We also understand that some buildings are too far gone to stay and they need to be removed. We'll prioritize which buildings need to go, but the row building will be our top priority to renovate. None of this will happen overnight. It'll take 5 to 7 years. But in the end, we'll be in control of what goes forward, how it gets done, and we'll own it. We also want to create recreational facilities, and once again, we're going back to the original plan for the Letchworth property. Of course, there can be walking and biking paths, farmers markets, skate park. The sky's the limit. One option is to create a teen center where teens can get together and interact with each other in a safe and supervised environment. Another option might be an outdoor amphitheater where we could get involved with all kinds of concerts and theater and movie nights, and we could actually generate some sponsors and bring revenue to the town. So how are we going to pay for all this? First and foremost is to use the $300,000 to $500,000 we get from Patriot Hills Golf Course and the $150,000 to $250,000 we get from the catering hall. We can also use a portion of our $5 million budget surplus. Third, we create a Stony Point Rising Fund. All that entails is keeping the budget for Patriot Hills at the level it's at in 2022. That will generate up to $600,000 for projects in the Letchworth plan and not raise taxes. And finally, we'll use every bit of the state, federal, county, and private funds that we can get to. So let's let the panel add some comments and discuss.
Did anybody want to embellish on that at all? Oh, Daria, go ahead.
And again, I don't profess to be the expert. When I looked at the agreement and looked at the zoning rights, there were several options in there that Jim and the town board has listed. It includes some options such as the hotel, a gas station, certain things around housing that Jim and others articulated yesterday. So if you really want to be informed as to the options, those were all laid out. Obviously, the option that Raja has is around, high-end hotel, some adjacent villas, I understand from his comments yesterday, and of course, upgrading to a private high-end golf course. So that's his vision, and it's associated with, one of the options that are listed in the zoning. I stand to be corrected, Jim, if you're saying that there's some other things. I see Jim raising his hand. So I think, from the standpoint of what the options are from zoning, I was scanning a couple of the questions. There's a lot of questions around, what are the options? What's in the zoning? So Jim, to be fair, you might want to comment there. Bob, it's up to you.
Mario, I was just going to question on the $5 million. To be clear, back when I first came on the town board, Jim White was on the town board. And the town board, very difficult times financial, they did a resolution to not spend the $5 million that was in reserve. I think that was very prudent on the town board. In the future, if you're gonna have to borrow money to invest in the buildings, if you pay from that $5 million, you will definitely Moody's will come and downgrade you. So before you could even spend that $5 million, you have to do a resolution authorizing the board to spend that prudent reserve. I'd be very careful.
Hey, Jim, did you, when you had to go out to Moody's to get your A1 bond rating for the bond anticipation notes, do you remember what the figure was on what you evaluated the golf course to be worth in order to keep for our equity?
That wasn't done during my time. I've maintained that A1 bond rating.
$13 million to get a bond rating. That's what the town board put forward for the worth of this golf course a few years ago.
Which town board was that and when did that happen? Because I know it wasn't while I was on the board.
We will continue to put the facts out. Let me just point out one thing. We had a good revelation about what the idea of this golf course was going to be. We're going to put villas on the golf course, and I'll be damned if I'm not going to make this one of not the best in New York, but we're going to make this golf course one of the best in the country. We're going to become in the top 100.
That's Raj.
Raj is saying that, not me.
Dave said yesterday.
Rod said we're going to become one of the top 100. There are 16 golf courses in New York State that comprise the top 100. The last New York State golf course is ranked 93. The name of that golf course is Sebenak Golf Course. It has some villas on it. It also has $1 million fee to become a club member. So how are we going to replace number 693 on the list? What would this be? What would this place be? Because that's his goal, to become one of the top 100 in the country, and he's got to replace that golf course, and it's $1 million to get in the golf course to play golf.
All the residents have the same rate that they're paying now.
You're not listening, my friend, and I thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. All right, I'd like to get back to a few questions because we got quite a few here. Payment of taxes on the property, when will it begin? And if not right away, why not? And actually, kind of related, it says here, why are you giving the buyer such a large tax break to sell this property? Is it needed? Why did Stony Point accept this in the contract? So, who wants that one?
Yeah, I'll make it simple. I think from the contract and the payments, the developer's not gonna pay taxes for the first 8 years. In the 9th year, we'll pay 10% of the assessment. And then the town will not get 100% of that assessment until 2053.
I will not be moderating that session. Thank you, Walt. What's that? I'm sorry, I can't hear you from back there.
He wants to get that kind of a deal with
Oh.
his business.
Well, I'll tell you what bothers me about that deal. You know what bothers me about that deal? If we have to stay in the courthouse for more than 2 years, we're gonna pay him, was it $9,000 a month? And he is not paying taxes at that point, okay? Not for another 7 or 8 years, and then not even the full amount until afterward. And here's the thing, you know, I might be on the other side of this issue if we got a good price on this deal, and my taxes went from 19,000 to 9,000. I might say, you know what, I love the golf course, but that makes a lot more sense for everybody. But I'll tell you folks, this is not gonna help you. This is not gonna reduce your taxes, trust me. Okay, let's get some more. What prevents the developer from turning around and selling to someone else? Does the golf course stay the golf course, or that down the road, it won't be sold for other purposes? How are golf course and Letchworth zoned? We actually have a zone thing coming up next, but someone can handle that.
There is absolutely nothing in the contract that prevents the developer from selling the property to anyone at any time. If he doesn't make the profits he likes, he could turn around and sell it a year from now.
To who?
Anybody?
Anybody?
Is the developer still proposing to build a large 5-star hotel with a convention center? Do we know the status of that anymore?
Yes.
Again, there are no definitive plans. Usually when public property goes to a private ownership, by law, am I correct? They are supposed to show plans of what will be on that property, and that has not been done. So in a public-private partnership, there are rules to follow that have not been followed by the town board or Mr. Amor.
Public-private partnership. Get that off your head. It is not.
It is not? Okay, so then the answer is no, we have no real plans, or it is not in the contract.
You had something?
The overlay, zoning overlay, says that the hotel has to be at least 75 rooms. When Mr. Amar went out and is trying to attract the Waldorf Astoria and large hotels, which he said he's doing, went before the IDA, and he is envisioning a hotel of at least 500 people, a conference center and a room, a conference center and other facilities. Just keep that in mind. A huge edifice.
Just,
Well,
can I stop you there for a second? Just for a second. Just to put it in perspective, he's talking about actually it's the Ritz-Carlton is what he used for the example. The cost of building a
It changes every month.
A 500-room Ritz-Carlton with conference and spa facilities will be somewhere in the vicinity of $750 million. It's about $1.5 million a room.
He has money, huh?
He has, no, wait. His IDA, potential deal with the IDA.
Dave, you want to come up? Why don't we get into your segment? 'Cause let's do it, because Dave is the expert on a lot of these contractual matters, and he's a CPA and has been researching this diligently. He is as our guest speaker, so we might as well bring him up right now. Dave Evangelista.
I'm gonna put this in a stand so I can kind of flip my papers. So let me just deal with the hotel for 1 minute. So his IDA this is a proposal with the IDA. It's not passed. He's got a preliminary approval. He has to go back to get final approval. They're talking about helping him with incentives of up to 125 million. So just to put it in perspective, he's talking to them about 125. He's talking to us about $1.5 million hotels, right? But just so you understand the size of 500 rooms. The Pearl River Hilton has 150 guest rooms. The Crown Plaza, what used to be the Hall Dome in Suffern, has 229 guest rooms, okay? The Sheraton Mahwah has 225 guest rooms, plus that's about 184,000 square feet, and they have about another 366,000 square feet on the 10 wide floors. So you're talking about, just using the Crown Plaza, 229, you're talking about something twice the size of either the Crown Plaza or Pearl River Hilton or bigger, okay? And he's got a little funding gap between the 125 million and $1.5 million, right? So I'm gonna jump a little bit because we're kind of pressed for time.
Before you leave that topic, Dave, I just want to embellish what he's saying here. Again, back to my industry, we sold 2 conference centers in the nearby area here. One was the IBM Conference Center, which was off exit 4 of the Palisade. The other one was the Harriman State Park Conference Center up there called Ardmore. I don't know if you're familiar with it. Ardmore has since closed up. It was bequeathed to Columbia University. They couldn't make it as a conference center up there. Columbia University couldn't make it as a conference center. The IBM Conference Center I used to use for my meetings, it was a state-of-the-art conference center with all the audio-visual, everything you could honestly ever hope for, recreation center, rooms, everything was in there. Had to sell it to a foreign company. They couldn't make it as a conference center. Who's going to make it here as a conference center? So I just wanted to embellish that.
And just as a side note, if you think about,
Before you go on your thing, just quick on the hotel, I don't know how.
Excuse me, you can fill out a card if you have a question.
He's a town supervisor.
Everybody else is doing it.
One quick one. Just like they we would enact a hotel room tax. That would benefit.
and I'm gonna get to that because that's part of my next part about the flaws and the holes in all of this, right? So that's great. And Raj mentioned that yesterday about all these revenues, but they're not in the contract, okay? So I'm gonna cover that in a minute, but I just wanna put in perspective too about the size of a facility like this. If you're familiar in Westchester, Arrowwood went under, Doral Arrowwood went under. Nice golf course, big hotel on Corporate Mile off of Westchester Avenue. They could not stay in business. So first of all, something to understand, and I've been in this town a long time. I want to understand, when the vote was originally to do this, yes, they put up all these numbers and showed how much profit it was going to be. But the majority of the vote was the emotion of having the property so no one could do anything else with it, right? That's what we're up against today, right? We're up against this monetary, and then there's the emotion of not having anything done that's out of our hands. So you have to consider that. I'm gonna tell you right now, I'm not a member of this organization. I clearly wasn't a member of yesterday's organization. I can tell you right now, there were more yeses in the room yesterday than there are no's in the room today. I just want to leave you with this. In the middle of a dispute, and what we're in now is a dispute. I've done enough litigation of corporate lawsuits to know the truth is somewhere in the middle. I can tell you right now, not everything they said today is totally accurate. Not everything said yesterday was accurate, right? What you need to leave here today with is a couple thoughts, and I'll run through some of my notes that I had ready for yesterday, but there was too much control of the conversation yesterday, so I couldn't get them in. You have to leave here knowing a couple things. So one is, this could pass. But this group was absolutely right. The contracts, this stack of paper I have here, which is the memorandum of understanding, the contract, the rider, and 3 amendments, and all that, and the IDA resolution, nothing is set. In fact, his due diligence period to put the deal doesn't expire until November 30th. So, and I checked on this yesterday, and Mr. Ma had agreed. The contracts really are not the contracts that will be signed. So when he agreed yesterday to make 2 or 3 amendments to the contract, he can, because here's what you're voting on. You are voting simply on, shall the town board resolution authorizing the sale of Patriot Hills Golf Course and the former Letchworth Village property be approved? No, wait, but that's what you're voting on. You're not voting on the approval of these contracts. You're voting on a resolution that the town board passed to sell the property. Now, if this goes down, and I'm going to go through some of the holes in the contract, there has to be public movement to make sure not only we negotiate in the 2 or 3 things that Raj said yesterday, but all the other things that Raj said, right? There's got to be a full court press on the town to get these things in the contract, all right? Either party can walk away from this contract, right? All the vote says is they're authorized to do it. So it is not over on November 2nd, okay? So just keep that in mind.
Hold on a second. Hold on. If there's a no vote, sorry, the contract is rescinded. I am sorry.
Well, if there's a no vote,
the contract is rescinded.
yes, if there's no, but if there's a yes vote, it's not over, because it doesn't approve any contracts. Raj can walk away, the town could essentially ask for things to be put in, and Raj could say no, that could force him to walk away.
No, he has a contract. Raj has a contract. I'm sorry with that too. Raj has a contract, and he can bind the town to it. I'm sorry.
Just let Dave finish.
They've already.
I'm sorry, he's not a lawyer.
Margaret, can these things be amended?
This agreement, as I have read it, and Mike, I know you've read it, I'm gonna say, I honestly don't know at this point. I'm not a litigator, but I think there's so many holes and not enough protection for the town that is in the current version. So I would ask, what is the position of the town at the moment?
I don't know, I read somewhere where each saying he's gonna renegotiate the contract with the seller, so.
Well-
He's an attorney, I asked him.
But what is the position of the town? What information?
Right, because yesterday, Jim, Raj said he was gonna allow you to make 2 to 3 amendments. We had a conversation about the vote is not on the documents, and the documents can be amended, correctly? Correct?
With the film and everything, they brought out the schools, send lawyers. They got all the
He's backing up, yeah.
Same law firm.
He agreed to rescind, the right of first refusal longer, but that's not something that I can do. That has to go, and Monday morning, the noted things that he stated, that will have to go to the town attorney, to go to his attorney. To put in, yes, if that's Steve, Jim Monahan can't tell you.
He's walking back.
Let's just cut it short. If it's going to be opened up for discussion, it can be amended. And I'm gonna go through a bunch of things that need to be addressed, okay?
Yeah, let's
All right?
do that.
Because these are the important items that are missing from the contract. Starting with Raj's partners, okay?
Can I interrupt just 1 second? If you have a binding contract, you can amend it if both parties agree. But unless both parties agree, as to this contract, unless both parties agree, you cannot amend it, period.
As I understand, the buyer is currently already in default, although there aren't strong default protections for the town at the moment. As I understand from Mr. Amar yesterday, the agreement which was signed on April 12th provided that within 30 days after the signing of the agreement, not the closing, which is to take place later on, within 30 days of the signing of the agreement, he was to put up that $3 million performance bond. Both he and his CFO, Irene Conklin, confirmed to me in his vote that that has not been done, and it's delayed. My question is, did the town waive that requirement?
Yes.
So he's in default of the contract anyway, so let's just talk about what's missing.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, so let's, okay.
Dave's got some information.
Let's just talk about what's not in there.
Let's let
So
Dave
that's
finish.
one of the things, right? Where's the performance of this clause, right? Where's the proof of performance of the bond? By the way,
Jim, we want to get Dave to finish, we're
you know,
running out of time.
one of the reasons I waited, one of the reasons I didn't jump in, hold
Wait a
on.
second, please. You were up there 2 hours yesterday. You were up there 2 hours as a master of ceremony. At your board meetings, you don't let anybody talk. You have 3 minutes to talk, and if you have any questions, you don't talk. Let us have our time. Really, let us have our time to discuss this.
Chairman, I apologize. I was asked a question, I apologize.
Thank you, Jim, but
So-
Dave,
so let's go back-
David, please continue.
So let's go back to the basics. So remember that. There is a chance if the vote goes down, I'll hedge to Michael, that things can still be fixed. But it's gonna take you talking to people, to talk to people, to put the pressure on the town to get these things fixed. So let's talk about the structure for a minute. There are actually 3 entities. By the way, there is no Patriot Hills LLC. There is no entity called Patriot Hills LLC. Okay? There are 3 separate entities, 2 of which are marginally, whether they're even validly in existence at the moment, because they haven't filed certain things with New York State. He showed 3 partners yesterday. We don't know, there's nothing in the contract that says, are these the 3 partners of all 3 entities? Or are there other partners? I wasn't so worried about that yesterday until I found out that of the $3 million, he's borrowing $2 million of the $3 million. So he's already leveraging this thing at 67% just to close the deal. Okay? So my biggest fear now is, yesterday, but he also offered that he had been severely ill. So I started thinking, what happens if he goes? He dies, he leaves, he retires, he's forced out, there's a partner dispute. Now, he's saying things as if they're guarantees in the contract, and this is where we have this disconnect. I watched the presentation, it was very nice. He made statements that this is in the contract, but it's not, it's in his vision. Now, do I doubt that's his vision? No. Do I doubt that he would like to do these things? No. Do I think they're gonna be a financial hardship to pull off? Yes. Do I think that his partners will do these things after if he was gone? Absolutely not. Okay? None of this is in the, so none of these things are in the contract. So let's go to the room tax. Let's go to his assertion that your taxes will go down. Your taxes will not go down. Why? The $22 million, $22 to $23 million Stony Point town budget between salaries and benefits is at least in the high 60s, 70%, maybe 80% range. Those items do not go down. Okay? They just don't. So pulling the golf course out, especially when the debt is paid off, is not going to lower taxes. It's going to increase, taxes are going to go up whether he owns this course or doesn't own this course. Now, with that said, yes, the bond's paid off in the next 10 years. Mostly in the next 5 years, but about 10 years. Most of it in the next year. 600, then it drops down to about 140,000 a year for 5 years. It does.
It's less, Dave.
So, but just keep in mind, that puts you about 30 years into the course. Some of the stuff he showed yesterday is going to have to be done. And some of the things you talked about should be done. That requires another bond. Okay? Just so everyone understands. Yes, there's cash flow. Yes, the audit report shows those cash flows. Yes, if you convert it to EBITDA, there's EBITDA. That is only paying a portion of the debt we've paid. Okay? Just remember that. So yes, there's positive cash flow. It's contributing to paying the debt. But part of this is it's a government and it's providing services for its population. There is always gonna be a cost to the government to run a golf course, a park, anything like that, right? It doesn't go away, it's the way it works. Country club's a little different, and even country clubs struggle. But golf courses that are in the middle of an exclusive country club where they can charge 6 figures a year in dues and they have that membership base, and public courses, the ones in the middle, they struggle. It is not a profitable business, right? So don't kid yourselves. It is not a profitable business, right? So you
So
gotta
if we
keep.
break even and we provide a service to our residents, isn't that breaking even?
Not even breaking even, I just want to point out, even if it's a negative with bond service, you gotta realize that's part of the government running a government, okay? It's not a bad thing, right? So,
I'm
that's.
sure we don't make money, Dave, on the Little League field, lowland.
No.
We're not making money,
You
Dave.
don't. So let me just
But
run
we have.
through, a couple of the things in it. So they had a nice schedule before about the one thing that bothered me, and the reason I actually started showing up was the glossy flyer of the 6.4 million being delivered at closing. And actually, honest to God, I wasn't paying much attention until this, and I started reading it. Yeah, I'm an accountant. And when 6.4 million is not $6.4 million, I get a little carried away. So this is clearly not 6.4. You kind of heard some of it. So at closing, it's actually $3,001,001, because don't forget the dollar he's paying for the other piece up
My
front.
mistake.
I'll give you two.
The $3 million bond, here's the problems with this bond. No, that's a separate bond. Those are two bonds. $3 million bond and $415,000 bond, two separate bonds. The town doesn't really know this contract. The town is not very well represented throughout this contract. If this was my client and I was the seller, this is how I read this, by the way. I read this from the point of view if my client was the buyer and if my client was the seller. My client was the seller, I'd be raising holy heck of the things that are missing. If my client was the buyer, I began to say, get it closed and let's get everything out of it we can immediately and cash it out. The warranties that Margaret started talking about yesterday, 15 warranties the town made to the buyer. Several of which are totally irrelevant to a government selling something. Mr. Amar, well, I can't tell if it's 1 or 3. It may be 1.5. The warranties to us, which don't include any type of financial guarantee, no performance guarantee. Like, let me talk about the 7,500 square feet. He said yesterday he envisioned about $200 a foot, or about $1.5 million. That's what's backed by the $3 million bond. By the way, the $3 million bond that he didn't deliver when it was due, there's nothing in here that says the bond has to be renewed or carried for the 7 years that he has to strike ground on the property. So according to this, he can deliver the bond and then let it expire. The bond costs about $40,000 a year. A $3 million performance bond costs about $40,000 or less per year. Just so you understand. So that's what he's delivering at closing, or in front of closing.
40,000.
Or less. It actually could be a little less.
3 million, 40,000.
Yeah, a little less. And then the $415,000 bond is obviously much less. The 7,500 square foot building. You heard yesterday, well, it's not limited. It could be 2 stories, it could be 3 stories. But the contract says 7,500 square feet, okay? So I kind of looked to see what 7,500 square feet is.
It's 2 houses.
It's gonna be a rec center, it's gonna be a community center, where you have the option of putting the court in it. So I started doing the math. If it's gonna have a rec center, a basketball court, just the court, is 4,500 square feet.
Alternate days of the week.
Now, so let's assume the kids are playing something in the rec room, and now we squeeze the court in as our cost, okay? So let's call the court 2,500 feet, 3,000 feet. I'm picturing the seniors playing at 2 card tables in a room off to the side. The other thing that's not in there is, he represented yesterday, our seniors they have nothing to do, they have no entertainment. Like, he was gonna provide entertainment. But when you look at this, he's only providing the building, not furnishings, not improvements, That's why he's using 200 a foot, because you're really gonna do it right, it'd be more like 300 a foot, right? So he's not providing anything. So what's the entertainment he's providing? When I walked out of here yesterday, I thought about it, I figured it out. That the seniors are gonna go watch Stony Point Town Court. Right? Because that's all that's in the contract, and that's assuming we build the court.
While
Right?
they're babysitting for the kids.
Right, so it's things like that are missing, like what, he says one thing, but honestly, I talked to him for about an hour, my wife and I talked about an hour yesterday. I believe he believes these things are in the contract. He's lived with this, I've seen this before, he's lived with this for 3 years.
14, he said.
Well, whatever, but this is kind of process, right? He believes this, but they're not in the contract.
He lives in a 7,500 square foot home. So you're telling us that the recreation center is going to be as big as his house?
Well, his house I actually think is bigger than that. So yeah, we have to wrap. So,
Bob, you wrap? We got to wrap.
okay, well, I have a lot more. If anyone wants to talk about it, there's a whole bunch of other things that are missing from this contract that the town is not guaranteeing.
You've been great, and I hope you put enough doubt in
What about the questions?
Go ahead, Jim.
There's room tax. That could have been put in the contract. And he said it yesterday, because I said to him, well, wait, if you build this hotel, but you lease it, it's still covered under that pilot, right? So now he's still not paying taxes, he collects the lease on the
Take a look at another
hotel.
video.
And he talked about all this tax revenue. Well, our share of the sales tax revenue is 1/4%, which is almost negligible. So then he came back with, after the meeting yesterday, this per capita hotel tax, occupancy tax, that would go specifically to Stony Point by New York State resolution. Nothing in the contract requires anyone to go get that approval. Right? So it's all these things that need to be put in covered, and that's what you need to spread the word.
Around 306.
Okay, thank you, Dave. That was very valuable. I learned a lot right there myself. We're running out of time, folks, so we're going to show you one more video. We have one more slide I want to put up and cover with you. I'm sorry, I got a lot of questions we couldn't get to, but I will stay here if you want to come up. We'll answer any questions you have that didn't get addressed. We have to vacate the room by 6 o'clock. I think it was a great give and take.
Take a look at another video.
Thank you. Go ahead, Steve.
If you live in Rockland County, you've seen this movie before. Developers building high-density housing, forever changing the rural character of our communities. It's happened in Airmont. It's happened in Chestnut Ridge. It's happened in Pomona, and it's happened in Clarkstown. And if our town board gets its way, it could happen in Stony Point. You see, once the Patriot Hills Golf Course and Letchworth Village are sold to one developer, that developer can turn around and sell it to someone else. It's all perfectly legal. And when that happens, the future of Letchworth Village and the golf course are mostly out of our control. Our local politicians tell us not to worry about high-density housing. They say the town's zoning laws will protect us. Funny how they forgot to mention something called the Fair Housing Act. Developers use this law to sue towns and challenge their zoning laws, tying up the town in years of litigation. Meanwhile, the building goes on. Just ask the people in Airmont, who lost 2 such lawsuits and face a third. Ask the people in Chestnut Ridge, which is fighting 2 zoning lawsuits. Ask the people in Clarkstown or Pomona, who are in court to prevent a religious school and apartments on 130 acres. Let's not have this movie play in Stony Point.
The Stony Point Rising Plan assures that we control the property and avoid an uncertain future, because the minute we turn this property over to someone else with the ability to resell any part of it at any time for any reason to anybody, we really lose control. And our zoning laws really won't help us, because we'll be involved in expensive and endless litigation. Pomona has been involved in a suit for over 10 years and has been ordered to pay the legal fees of the developer, which are $2.1 million. So, in our view, the Stony Point Rising Plan isn't against development. We're pro-development, but the contract as it stands right now is not the right deal. We can make Patriot Hills and Letchworth Village a financial and economic dynamo for our town and cash in on the $25 billion investment, not simply turn it over to a private developer. We can generate $500,000 annually through the golf course. We revitalize Letchworth Village for a variety of public uses. And we keep the entire 265 acres safely in our control. We don't have to worry about what happens to it in the future. So in closing, we own this property. We've invested $25 million in its development. Let's keep it where it belongs, with the people of Stony Point.
Can we put that slide up, the last one, Steve? I just have one slide I want to go over very quickly. It's a point-counterpoint slide. So basically what we're saying here, you have two options. You can vote yes, or you can vote no. So if you vote yes, the developer cashes in on our $25 million investment for, as we said, less than 10 cents on the dollar, and just as our mortgage is being paid off. Or we can continue to operate Patriot Hills. It will be profitable within the year, and we have untapped potential here. Believe me, we do, folks. I want to say one thing. A building lot around the corner from my house just sold behind Dunkin' Donuts. It's the worst possible building lot you could imagine. There's no access to the street. He's in the back of 2 backyards. They sold. They want to get $1 million on the house. The property, 1 acre or less, sold for $100,000. On 273 acres, that's over $27 million worth of value. If we want to build homes, we can cash in for $227 million immediately. We can do it too. Okay, so that's number one. Vote yes, and there's no tax revenue from the builder for 8 years. The first full payment is, as we said, 31 years. I'll be 103 years old. Okay? Vote no. We receive golf profits of over $300,000 to $600,000 annually, accumulating up to $18.6 million in revenue over the 31-year period. If you vote yes, the Letchworth buildings will be demolished for a 500-room hotel, multi-family housing, 12 units per acre, 120 units, a gas station, a 4,000 square foot store, and more could be in our future. If we vote no, we use the golf course profits to develop Letchworth by subdividing the lots, fixing the buildings ourselves, and selling them off and making the profit on those buildings. We can do all of those things if we take the time to really investigate it and apply ourselves. It's the vision we had from day one. If we vote yes, the developer has the right to resell all or part of the Patriot Hills and Letchworth to anyone at any time for any reason, and that exposes us all to an uncertain future. As someone who was promised a permanent parkland from my house on the 5th hole, I'm upset about the potential that I might have multiple housing or some kind of strip mall or something by my house. I don't know how you feel about it. If we vote no, we keep the Letchworth and Patriot Hills in the Stony Point control and safe from future private development or zoning lawsuits. I don't think anyone up here is against development and against progress. What we're saying is we don't want to be ripped off. We don't want to have the loss of control of our own futures and our own destinies. Vote yes, you're going to have to relocate the town court and build a lease to purchase a new building or pay $108,000 annually to the developer, who, by the way, is still not going to be paying taxes. Vote no, we maintain the control of Letchworth, the buildings to renovate or remove as needed, Kirkbride Hall, Town Court, Patriot Paws, and community gardens. If we vote yes, we'll lose ownership and control of over 265 acres, prime acres in the Hudson Valley area, which, as we all know, is very, very well worth it and very potentially profitable. Our property remains publicly owned if we vote no, and we operate it as Stony Pointers who will benefit greatly from our original $25 million investment that we all voted for, or most of us did, years and years ago. Just one second. I think there's, in closing, we're going to...
There's a lot of questions that have not been answered. We're going to commit ourselves putting the questions that you're asking on the webpage, www.StonyPointUnited.net. We'll take these questions, we'll write out the questions, nobody signed their name to them, and we'll do our best to answer them. If the information given today hopefully answers several of these. The entire film here the entire meeting has been filmed and will appear where? Facebook Live?
No, I'm just gonna send it to you. Also be uploaded.
We will tell you where you can view the film on our website. Anita, you need to come up because this is, we'll stay, we'll adjourn the meeting after Anita, but we'll stay and answer the questions. But the important part of the meeting is right now because we need help. We need you to talk to your neighbors, your friends, because this is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. It's up or down. If we say no, we can revisit. If we say yes, goodbye Patriot Hills and this land.